Greetings brothers, today we're breaking down another competitive list in the series where we look at army lists and basically score them on 5 key factors. And this list today comes from Bell of Lost Souls, and it is a quote-unquote unbeatable army list that was shared by the Blood Angels in February of 2021. If we're just meeting, I'm John, the Blood Angels Commander, and every week on this channel we have multiple Blood Angels videos designed to help you get the best out of your army list. And just a little quick note before we start, we are giving away Blade Guard Veterans, Eradicators and the new Storm Speeder this week. So all you gotta do to win one of these box kits is go over to my video I published on Friday and just simply leave a comment. It's the Leviathan Dread versus the Derodeo Dread, and what we're going to do is we're going to actually give away these kits on stream during the Blood Angels Army List show that goes out at 4 PM every Sunday. So what we do in these videos when we break down the competitive lists is very much what I will do for you and your army list on stream every Sunday at 4 o'clock. We actually are going into episode 11 of the show this week, and someone just said in the chat that they had their list reviewed on episode 4 and now they're on a 4-game winning streak. So I guess we are providing value, so please come hang out with us. We are here live on YouTube every Sunday. Alright, so now let's get into this unbeatable list and we'll look at the whole list, we'll break it down, we'll look at the strengths, the weaknesses, and then we'll give it a final sum up and a score out of 50, which is what I do for all the lists when you guys submit them to me. So in this list, we're looking at 2 patrol detachments, and we're also taking 2 relics of the chapter and 1 hero of the chapter, which I like because I think that those CP spent on those abilities essentially power your characters up or your units for the entire game. So I generally like to spend a good amount of my CP before the battle starts. So if we look at the first patrol, it's a captain on a bike. He obviously has a chainsword, which is upgraded to the Teeth of Terra. He has Rights of War to grant obsec, and he is the warlord. We also have a librarian with Unleashed Rage, Null Zone, and Wings of Sanguinius. So to do that and have the power from a second discipline, you need to have the Tomb of Malcador relic, so that's what he's got. We then have 1 squad of infiltrators, great unit for zoning on the battlefield. 6 Blade Guard Veterans in a squad, which is sort of a strange choice because if you kept this Blade Guard Veterans at 5, they're much cheaper transhuman, but nonetheless this list is 6. And then we've got an 8 Sanguinary Guard, all with bolt guns, 2 power fists, 6 axes, and then finally we actually have some heavy support here in this first patrol, which is a Thunderfire cannon. In the second patrol detachment, we obviously have another HQ, and it is the Sanguinary Priest that everybody knows and loves. He has been upgraded to Chief Apothecary, he has got Icon of the Angel, and he also has that Selfless Healer trait, so he is doing 2 heals per turn and also 1 revive for free. Then for troops, we have another squad of infiltrators. For elites, this time we have 2 squads of 8-man Sanguinary Guard, all with bolt guns again, 1 squad full of axes, 1 squad full of swords, and then to round out the list, we have a heavy support 2 units, both are Eradicators, one's 4-man, one's 3-man, and these guys have actually been given the heavy Melta rifles. So this list starts the game with 9 command points and is a round, flat 2,000 point list. So I think I talk a lot about trying to build a balanced Blood Angels list, and the way I see balanced is probably 400 to 500 points worth of troops that can do reasonably heavy shooting, and I wouldn't probably include stuff like your infiltrator squads in that. I would be basically talking like Redemptors, Leviathans, Eradicators, and Scepters, top tier picks that can do a good amount of shooting, and this list kind of falls perfectly into this bracket. So let's look at the strategy. So I guess we start with the Phobos troop choices. They're brilliant for holding those backfield objectives or being deployed aggressively to basically hold or zone out the enemy from certain positions. We have a 6-man Blade Guard Veteran squad, which I think is perfect for holding the centre of the table and obviously can react to threats wherever they need to go. We do have the Bike Captain. I feel like he could be further improved with this list if we did pick up Angel's Exemplar. We could give him that second Warlord trait, something like Gift of Foresight. To me seems like it would be a high value pick here, but nonetheless he does have 9 attacks on the charge with his Strength 5, -2, 2 damage Teeth of Terra. We have that 3 power Utility Librarian who is bringing Unleash Rage and Null Zone, 2 really key powers and also really strong, adding a lot of value there. The main bulk of the close combat here comes from 24 Sanguinary Guard broken down into 3 squads of 8. Obviously they all have bolters, so it's actually like 48 Angelus Portal shots. So I mean, that's decent nonetheless. However, with just Sanguinary Guard, I do feel that there's a certain potential to be a little bit one-dimensional there. I like to switch up in my list, usually with like some Vanguard Veterans or some Death Company, but nonetheless this list is 24 Sanguinary Guard. The Priest, obviously, we talked about him already, how he can do, he gives the Feel No Pain, he can obviously do heals and revives. And then 7 Eradicators with the heavy melter rifles, and we know for point, Eradicators are pretty much one of the most damaging units in the game right now. Even with the increase in points, they're still really damaging. And the heavy melter rifles, that additional potential +4 damage if you ever get to half range is kind of crazy. And then finally, just to sort of add a little bit of crowd control almost here, we have the Thunderfire Cannon, who can use his Tremor Shells to sort of disrupt enemy movement. However, I do feel like there are slightly better picks, and we'll talk about them in a second when we move on to strengths and weaknesses. So let's look at the strengths and weaknesses for the list, and we start with some highly competitive character pickups, and this would be obviously your Priest and your Librarian, and then our character on bikes. And I've talked a lot about how the characters on bikes are performing really well in 9th edition. The additional toughness and the Chapter Master upgrades, or the chapter upgrades in general, you can obviously put them in the Death Company as well. They bring a lot to the table. We also have a good psychic presence here from our Librarian, and sometimes having those ability to not deny psychic powers can be really important, so we have that. The Golden Host, 24 Sanguinary Guard, it's so much close combat. Once we get to turn 3 and we're in Savage Echoes, it's 5 attacks per model, so having 24 of them, potentially you can put out a ridiculous number of attacks. However, having this 3 units identical, I'm not sure I super like that, because in some ways it makes your planning a little bit easier because you don't have to think so much about where your units go. But sometimes I like having a more tanky squad, like the Vanguard Veterans with their Storm Shields, being able to basically lead that charge and mop up some of the heavy fire that comes, as you're trying to get across the board. For backfield protection, we have those infiltrators. We know they're amazing. 2 squads can zone such a huge area, and they could be basically used very defensively, or they can be used offensively again. Their 12-inch deep strike denial is well worth the 15 extra points you pay over most other troop choices, in my opinion. I do still like Incursors, and I think Incursors have a role, but Infiltrators, for me, they just sort of take a bit of a weight off. If you put them on the backfield, you can pretty much guarantee they're going to be surviving. The ability to use a smoke screen as well for Phobos troops, and then guerrilla tactics if you need them somewhere else in the battlefield is also very useful. We also do have the reroll of charges with the Sanguinary Priest, so as our Golden Host move forward, we can keep them alive a bit more with the 6+ Feel No Pain, and then we can bring some of them back to life, and then we can reroll some charges, so that is generally very good. And the Captain with the Rights of War potentially makes all these 24 units, probably not 24, maybe 10 of them, giving them the ability to obsec some enemy objectives as well. And then finally, we're backed up with Eradicators, who can melt enemies. 7 of them is a good number, that's 14 melt the shots, and if they can be positioned well, or they can get to where they need to be and lay down covering fire, these guys can melt just about anything across the battlefield. So that being said, I think there is some weaknesses in this list, and the first one is there's no real way to counter fight first or fight last rules, and they can be prevalent in 9th edition, especially against different armies. So, the Whirlwind does a great job of adding that dynamic to you if you're not going to take the Psychic Power Veil of Time. So I feel Whirlwind versus the Thunderfire, I think 5 points more is all the Whirlwind's going to cost, and I think that is a much better pickup, and also it's probably a bit more survivable, but I mean that's neither here nor there. This army list would also be very weak against units with -1 damage, so stuff like Duty Eternal or Death Guard, it's going to have some serious problems against those. And then also is also going to be a little bit weaker against people have been saying recently like Deathwing Knights are a big problem. So again, you know, only being able to wound them on a 4+, you're going to lose a lot of the value of those Sanguinary Guards, Red Thirst, and their high strength weapons. So yeah, I feel like just because it's all Sanguinary Guard, the list is a little bit one-dimensional in that sense. Now, I have been asked by one of the channel members this week if we can look a bit more in depth in Sanguinary Guard, so that will be Friday's video this week, and we'll look at both the axes, the power fists and the swords, and then we'll compare them you know, against some of these really problematic units and find out, are they still super strong or are they having some problems, and if so, what can we replace them with, you know, to basically add more value and add a bit less one dimension to two army lists that want to go double down on close combat, which I think is great for Blood Angels, but I think right now maybe we need to start thinking a little bit more beyond. This is 2 competitive lists now I've looked at that have had 3 massive squads of Sanguinary Guard, and yeah, I think that there just needs to be a little bit more diversity in there. Maybe last edition you could do that, but nowadays, as all the new rules roll out, I don't think that's going to be quite as prevalent as it was previously. And then finally we get to scoring, and this is what we do every Sunday on the stream, and hopefully previously I was hoping that I would add value to you guys' lists and maybe make you think about something you haven't thought about, and I think this week we got a little bit of vindication on that. Cue the Captain Holt meme. So here we go, we're going to score this very competitive list, and then we'll have some final thoughts about it. So we'll start with OBSEC and objective holding, and obviously having 2 troops of infiltrators adds a lot of potential holding to your list, and then rights of war on your captain to turn some of those jump units or offensive units into OBSEC as well. So 8.5 out of 10. Usually if we have 3 Phobos units I tend to go to a 9, so it's a decent score, but you know, it's a fine place to start. Then if we look at like basically anti-horde, anti-infantry effectiveness, I've said 8.5 out of 10 as well for here. So we would potentially have 40 Angelus Bolter shots, and along with a Thunderfire cannon, and then, you know, I guess we could use our Eradicators if we had to. So potentially we have enough to clear out any screens that we need to, but I just feel like maybe if there was a Redemptor Dreadnought in there, or maybe if there was just some Inceptors or something, like some other top tier picks, we might be able to do a little bit more effectiveness. So again, I've said 8.5 out of 10. If we look at the anti-vehicle, anti-monster, I've said 9.5 out of 10. So Eradicators with heavy melt rifle are pretty much the best unit for dueling damage point for point right now in terms of shooting, and then 48 Sanguinary Guard with axes, swords, fists, you know, those guys can do a phenomenal amount of damage. But there are some armies that's going to be problematic against, and we will look at that and we will discuss that on Friday, so make sure you tune in for that video then. But overall, I still think it should be able to deal with most threats pretty effectively. You know, we have those Blade Guards in there as well, we have a couple of very decent characters, we have the ability to do Null Zone, so, and Unleash Rage as well on those big Sanguinary Guard to add like probably 8 to 10 more attacks. So overall, I think anti-vehicle, anti-monster, you know, big enemies, it should do absolutely fine. So for mobility, I don't foresee any problems. It's an 8 out of 10, good number of jump packs, also a bike, and then that wings pickup already on the jump librarian makes him like super mobile. So I think mobility is not an issue in this list at all. And then finally, we talk about specialization. So specialization is an interesting category and it's very abstract, but what I try and, or how I try and score it is when I look at your list, I try and think like, have you doubled down too much on a single thing? Like if you submit a list of Blood Angels with like 1500 points of heavy artillery, I'm going to tell you specialized and give you a terrible score. So I don't think this list is too specialized. I'm going with an 8.5 out of 10, which is very reasonable, but I think maybe just like one tweak to some of these Sanguinary Guard units, we could possibly push it to a 9 or a 9.5, and maybe even one tweak to Eradicators. Do we really need 7 of them? That doesn't feel very Blood Angels, having 7 Eradicators. You know, maybe there was a switch there where we've got some Inceptors and some Eradicators, or maybe attack bikes with multi-meltas again are quite good for Blood Angels right now. So 8.5 out of 10. And I mean, the reason that I haven't gone any higher for that is, like, I think we need to consider diversity as more codexes and more army lists start rolling out. Things are changing, and yeah, I mean, Sanguinary Guard, I guess, are a hot topic, so please join me on Friday when we talk about them. And, you know, my video on Friday will 100% help you decide, is it axes, swords, or power fists, and also what are the other options that we should consider for Blood Angels right now. So we finished with 43 out of 50, and this is a very decent score, but we actually had 2 lists just on Sunday that I believe both were pushing 45 points. So I don't think this really is the unbeatable army list. I mean, I think it's decent, but I think there are a few things that I would consider changing to make this list a bit stronger. And the first one is the Whirlwind. I think Suppression Fire is an amazing stratagem. You know, it makes enemies fight last in your turn and their turn. And it's only 5 more points than the Thunderfire Cannon, so I would totally switch that out. I'd also look at like a big squad of Vanguard Vets over the Sanguinary Guard. We can probably get 8 or 9 Vanguard Vets for the exact same price as we can the Sanguinary Guard, and we can arm them. Really interestingly, Lightning Claws right now are performing really well, and they will be very good against those like Deathwing Knights that you can only wound on 4+. You'll actually still have a 75% chance to wound them with Vanguard Vets with Lightning Claws. I also think there's a little bit of an argument for your captain to take the Hammer of Baal. I mean, he can do a lot of work with the Hammer of Baal. It is basically the old Thunderhammer profile, strength 8, -3, 3 damage, but it doesn't take any -1 to hit, so your captain with his 8 attacks or however many would be hitting on 2s and then probably wounding on 2s or 3s. You can combo that with something like Imperium Sword or Gift of Foresight to really make him a very scary character to have to deal with. And then finally, yeah, I mean, I think that the Eradicators, having 7 of them like that, feels like maybe there's a better synergy to be had, you know, like a Redemptor Dreadnought and less Eradicators. Maybe, I guess it would have to be like 3, but the Redemptor Dreadnought could potentially pop Wisdom of the Ancient and then buff those other Eradicators, their wounds or their hits, as it felt that it needed to. So, and then obviously, like if it's a Redemptor Dreadnought, then you have the advantage of it has the ability of doing some devastating damage in close combat too. And maybe just 7 Eradicators doesn't feel very Blood Angels to me. I mean, I've run army lists that have 4 Eradicators, but I feel like there's other factions that are better than shooting than us. So, would I double down on 7 Eradicators? I think it's an awful lot of points, right? Like, in this list it was 350 points of Eradicators. I think I would totally split that up. And yeah, I think attack bikes with multi-meltas as well, a really interesting option, and also really cheap to put into strategic reserve, so they are definitely something to consider too. I am actually working on a video for the top 10 tier picks for Blood Angels in 9th edition. I expect that to be ready about this time next week. So on Friday, Sanguinary Guard, next week, top 10 Blood Angels unit picks in 9th edition, and then after that, I think the week after that, or maybe one more week after that, we're finally going to be able to play some live games again due to the COVID situation. So I'll have some more information on that soon, but I'm really looking forward to streaming some battle reports. Again, we have upgraded our setup a lot in the last few months, so hopefully that'll be really good and interesting as well. So thanks very much for supporting the channel, guys. This week we've seen a lot of new members. It's very appreciated, and if you do want to support the channel in any way, shape or form, you can find various links in the video description below. And we do now have a Discord, so basically anyone that watches the channel can come and hang out with me, and you know, a very cool community of Blood Angels players that we were building as we discuss everything from, I guess, army lists to painting, to general life, I guess, because everybody's stuck at home due to the pandemic. So hope to see you guys all in the next video. Really appreciate you watching. By the blood are we made, brothers. Peace.